Hello, hello, and welcome to our next video. This is for lesson 10.5, and the title for this is Metric Measures. Metric. Okay, so we've been doing a lot of converting between length, feet, and inches. We've done converting between weight, ounces, pounds. We've been doing converting between capacity, gallons, quarts, that kind of stuff. And so today we're going to be looking at metric, which measures the same things. It measures capacity, measures length, and measures weight. But the metric system works differently than our standard measurement system. So the very first thing I want you to do is to look at the math stuff you got this week and find this little chart. Okay? I put some tape on here so that you can use dry erase markers on it, and then a tissue will erase for you. Okay? But let's just talk about this metric system deal right here. The first thing we notice on here is that there's all these funny words down at the bottom, and these words are actually prefixes, and this goes back to like a grammar thing. Do you remember what a prefix is, what it does? A prefix is just at the beginning of a word, and it tells you some information about that word. It just comes at the beginning. And then this word right here, unit, that means what we're measuring in. So we can be measuring in grams, which is measuring weight. We can measure in liters, which is measuring capacity, or we can measure in meters, which is measuring length. But on the metric system, we don't change between, feet and inches and yards and whatever. They only use meters, and then they have these different prefixes in front of them. Kilo is the biggest, so whenever you see a kilometer, that's the biggest unit on the metric system. Then there's a hectometer, a decameter, a decimeter, centimeter, and millimeter. And we've heard these ones before. We've heard centimeter, millimeter, and kilometer before. But hectometer, decameter, and decimeter are new, which is okay. We can learn new stuff. And then it's the same with liters and grams, where we put this prefix at the beginning of our unit, whatever we're measuring in. Kiloliter, hectoliter, decaliter, deciliter, centiliter, milliliter. We're most familiar with milliliters. That's usually how they measure water bottles, how much is in a water bottle. And then with grams, kilograms, I'm sure we've heard of before. Then there's hectograms, decagrams, decigrams, centigrams, and milligrams. We've probably heard of milligrams too. Okay, so with these prefixes, each one on the metric system, you move by either multiplying or dividing by 10. And we did something similar to this closer to the beginning of the year when we had those patterns. Multiply by 10, 100,000, divide by 10, 100,000. That's what we're going to be doing here as well. Okay, so before we get any further, let's write some of this stuff down. The metric system. Increases and decreases by powers of 10, which means 10, 100,000. Okay? Each step, and I'm going to put step in quotation marks because it's not like a stair step, it just means a step on our little chart that we were just looking at. Each step has a prefix which is the beginning of the word. that you put in front of the unit you are using. So you would see something like kilograms, and here's that prefix kilo. Or you would see something like centimeter, and here's that prefix again. Okay, so let's go back to our little chart here. Each step, if I'm going from one to the next, I'll either multiply or divide to move around on our chart. Okay, and it's really the same as we've been doing, where when you go from a big unit to a smaller unit, you'll multiply, but instead of looking for a base number like what we've been doing, we're just going to multiply by 10, 100, or 1,000, depending on how many steps we're moving. So for example, and we'll write this in our notes too, but just so that you can see what we're talking about here, if I had 8 decameters, see I put a little decimal point in here. You always put the decimal point after the unit you're using. If I have 8 decameters, and I want to know how many decimeters that is, then I would do 8 times 10 for this step, and then times 10 for this step. So I'm counting times 10 times 10. Here's my new period, my new decimal point. Oops. This one's gone. And then we'll fill that in with zeros. So 8 decameters is the same as 800 decimeters. And that's what these little letters up here are for. They're telling you the abbreviation. So to write decimeter, it would be DM. Oops. D for deci, M for meter. Okay, to do decameter, it would look like this. DA, oh, I guess that should be a capital D, huh? DA for deca, M for meter. And we'll see some more of this. I just wanted to show you what I was talking about with moving up and down. Okay, let's go back to our notes. Okay, so like I was saying, in order to convert, let's give this a minute to catch up here. There we go. To convert between units, so going from like kilometer to meter or something like that, moving around on that chart, you still have to know which unit is bigger and which unit is smaller. The reason for that is because the rule doesn't change when converting on the metric system. If you're going from big to small, you're still going to multiply because you're going to have more small ones to make up one big one. If you're going from small to big, you'll divide because you're going to have less big ones making up lots of small ones. Okay, and so that's the same, but instead, like I said, instead of dividing or multiplying by the base number of the small unit, we're just going to use powers of 10, 10, 100, 1,000, depending on how many steps we're jumping. Okay, so let's look at this with multiplication. To move from big to small, still multiply, but multiply by 10, 100, 1,000, depending on how many steps you're moving. It could be more than that. Okay? And in order to do this, I showed you a little bit earlier. To do that, you just move the decimal. Move the decimal to the place you're converting to. Then fill the empty boxes with zeros. Oops. There we go. I know I kind of showed you what I meant by that, but let's look at an example. Pause the video if you need to finish writing this down, and then when you're done, go ahead and click play again. Same as always. Here's an example for that. If I had three, oh, this is going to be sneaky again. If I had 3 deciliters and I wanted to know how many liters that was. Okay, let's look at our chart here. Let's see what this looks like for real. If I have 3 deciliters, always put the decimal point at the end of the unit you're using behind the number. So here we put it behind the 3 because we only have 3 deciliters. And if I want to know how many liters that is, I have to find liter. Liter, 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 liter. Uh-oh, I don't see it down here. That's because liter is up here by itself. This is like the whole unit. It's not 10 more and it's not 10 less. It's one unit by itself. So liter, meter, and gram are here in the middle. So if I want to know how many deciliters or how many meters 3 deciliters is, I'm going to cross out my decimal point there and move it to the new place that I'm converting to. So in this case, we're looking at liters. And that's on paper, so it's not going to come off. Silly Mrs. Graber. And then fill in that box, that empty box, with a 0. So I would have 30 liters makes 3 deciliters. And notice how those numbers don't change. There's a 3 and then there's a 3. So there's 3 deciliters and 30 liters. Okay? So this number right here, all we did was stick a 0 behind it, which is really easy. Makes it really nice when we're converting on the metric system. Okay, let's write that example in our notes. Here we go. So here, going from a big unit to a small unit, you still multiply, but instead of multiplying by a base number, you multiply by 10. 3 times 10 is 30. And I say multiply by 10 because I'm only moving one box over. I started here, and I moved into this box. Remember, each box you either multiply or divide by 10 for each one. So here I would have a little times 10. 3 times 10 is 30. Okay. Running short on time, so I'm going to stop this video. It'll continue on in the next one where we're going to finish up our notes and get into the homework a little bit. Okay, I'll see you in the next one.